1, 2, 3, 4. Extra, extra, read all about it. Know the future in advance. Subscribe, like, and share.
The End Time Newsboy presents End Time Events, Part 3, A Nightmare in Babylon. Hi, my name is Daniel. This is now Part 3 of the End Time series, in which we're looking at current and future events according to prophecy. We left off last time with the statement, to understand the future, we need to first understand the past. Therefore, what we're going to do now is shine a light on the future by referring to the past. We begin by focusing our attention on the ancient Daniel in the Lion's Den prophet, simply known as Daniel. The insight of Daniel's prophecies can give us a meaningful overview of the past, the present, and the future history of humanity. Our story is set 2,600 years ago in the ancient city of Babylon. It is the story about a king who had a terrible nightmare. The king's name was Nebuchadnezzar, king of the Babylonian Empire. Strangely, although Nebuchadnezzar felt the dream was extremely important, he couldn't remember the details of his dream. In those days, the Babylonian Empire extended across the region that roughly forms the Middle East today. Nebuchadnezzar had already invaded Israel and made it part of the Babylonian Empire. As a result, many Jews had been taken into captivity to live and serve in Babylon. To cut a long story short, a young Jewish man named Daniel had the same dream as Nebuchadnezzar. When young Daniel was able to retell the details of the dream to Nebuchadnezzar and interpret the dream, he won great favor with the king and was put in a position of high authority. This is how the image may have appeared in the dreams of both Nebuchadnezzar and Daniel. You'll notice how the different body regions of the image are made of different metals. In a moment, we're going to explore how each metal and each corresponding body region represent different empires of the past, the present, and the future. You'll also notice that the image doesn't represent all the world empires that have existed throughout history, only those that relate directly to end-time prophecy. However, in the end, all the world empires will have been absorbed and arranged into the New World Order. So now, let's take a closer look at the meaning and significance of this image. We begin as Daniel interprets the meaning of the image. Daniel explained that the head of gold represented Nebuchadnezzar and his Babylonian Empire. Next, Daniel explained that the arms and breasts of silver represented an inferior empire that would come after the Babylonian Empire. Many years later, the less glorious dual empire of Medo-Persia conquered Babylon, just as Daniel had predicted. Daniel went on to explain that the belly and thighs of brass represented another empire that would replace Medo-Persia. That empire turned out to be Greece. In another of Daniel's prophecies, he even named this conquering force as the Grecian Empire of Alexander the Great. History records that this is indeed how events played out, 200 years after Daniel had been given his prophetic vision from heaven. Next, Daniel explained that the legs of iron represented the empire that would replace the Grecian Empire. History teaches us that the marching armies of the Roman Empire trod underfoot the Grecian Empire and extended Rome's dominance beyond that of its predecessors, all as Daniel had predicted. These are just some of the amazing predictions described in the unrecognized bestseller simply known as the Book of Daniel. And now to the most important part of the image, the part that applies to us today. Here we examine the feet and toes, which were made of iron and clay. Let's keep this simple and to the point. The iron and clay in the feet and toes represent dictatorships and democracies that form the governments of the world today and the New World Order of tomorrow. A little further along, you'll understand how perfectly the iron and the clay represent dictatorships and democracies. For now, let's complete the explanation of the 10 toes in the image. This is what should interest us the most because it relates directly to soon coming end time events. Daniel told Nebuchadnezzar that the 10 toes of iron and clay represent 10 kings who would rule over the entire world in the last days. Daniel was foretelling the formation of the governing council of the soon coming New World Order. Daniel concluded his predictions by telling that these 10 kings will only rule for a short time, to then be replaced by an everlasting kingdom. We'll cover more about that everlasting kingdom in a moment. For now, let's examine how those various body parts and various metals represent different empires. Body parts, empires, you may wonder, where's the connection? It's well known that both the head of gold and the winged lion are synonymous with Babylon. But what about the arms and the breasts of silver, you may wonder? As silver is inferior to gold, Daniel rightly predicted that the Medo-Persian Empire would be inferior to the Golden Age of Babylon. Furthermore, as we all have one arm that is stronger than the other, the Persian army was stronger than the Medes, but they both ruled together as the dual Medo-Persian Empire. Now, can you remember what the belly and thighs of brass represent? You're correct if your answer was the Grecian Empire of Alexander the Great. And as brass is inferior to silver, it was considered that Alexander the Great and his Greek armies were inferior to the mighty strength of the Medo-Persian Empire. Nevertheless, Alexander conquered Medo-Persia with swiftness and with force, just as Daniel had predicted in prophecy 200 years earlier. Now let's explain how the belly and thighs of the image relate to the Grecian Empire. The Greeks were renowned for their great interest in fine foods and philosophy, as well as interest in spiritual and sexual matters, which are all depicted by the torso region of the body, the belly being described as the seat of the spirit. After Greece came the Roman Empire, which engulfed not only the regions of the Grecian Empire, but with the crushing force of its mighty army, Rome spread further than all the empires that had preceded it. But even mighty Rome eventually declined and decayed, dividing into the Constantine and Byzantine empires. All of this, the crushing force of Rome's mighty marching army and the eventual dividing into two empires, are well depicted in the image as the two legs of iron. Now, if you're still wondering how the feet and toes of iron and clay could possibly represent the dictatorships and democracies of today, here's how. Dictatorships are decided by the stronger over the weaker, the ruling over the ruled, the iron over the clay. Whereas democracies are elected by the people. People are sometimes referred to as the clay in prophetic terms. Right now, you may be saying, yeah, that makes sense, but Rome fell long ago. So how can the iron in the legs relate to the iron in the feet and toes? A good question, and a good question deserves a satisfactory answer. And the answer can be seen all around us if we look. Research shows how Roman influence has been absorbed into many aspects of our modern day world. That explains the iron in the feet and toes. Sometimes the simplest answer is the most correct. But you may be wondering how all this is going to come into play concerning the New World Order. Looking back down the highway of history proves that Daniel's predictions have been correct so far. So we can be certain that Daniel's future predictions will be just as correct. Now it's time to peek into the realm of the future concerning Daniel's end-time predictions. The prophecies of Daniel tell us that these 10 kings will only rule for a short time. Prophecy mentions 7 years. Prophecy also tells us that during the last half of those 7 years, there will be a time of great trouble on earth, the likes of which the world has never seen before, nor will ever see again. Those 3.5 years of trouble will be life-threatening to each and every individual on the face of the earth. In future episodes, the End Time series will detail those events so that you will know the future in advance and be better prepared for what is to come. For now, it's sufficient to say that the days of these 10 kings are numbered, literally, in prophecy. So what will happen to these 10 kings? Daniel explained that in the days of these 10 kings, a rock will come down from heaven and smash the New World Order to bits and blow it to smithereens. You may think that to mean an asteroid or meteorite will hit the earth. This is not what prophecy is talking about. Then what, you might ask? That's the time when the unseen spirit world will open up and merge with this physical world for all to see. According to prophecy, that's the time when the rock of heaven, the rock of ages, will come down and smash the draconian one world government to bits and blow it to kingdom come, literally. That's the time when the predicted appearing of Jesus Christ in the clouds will happen. That's the time when man's rule on earth will end and heaven's rule on earth will begin. And that's the time when there will be 1,000 years of peace, prosperity, and plenty for all on earth, when the kingdom of love finally rules on earth. Imagine what that will mean for humanity. A long-awaited answer to prayer will finally become a reality. But first, the world must pass through the darkest hour the earth will ever know, before the dawning of that great and beautiful day known as the Millennium. The purpose of the End Time Event Series is to present the reality of what is to come, so you will be better prepared by knowing the truth and the sequence of events to come. So be sure to find out more next time when we'll look deeper into the incredible predictions of Daniel the prophet and see things from another viewpoint when we'll present the other side of the coin. Thanks for watching. Bye for now. History has proven and will continue to prove that the ancient prophecies of Daniel have accurately predicted the past, the present, and ultimately the future of humanity. Next in the series, Part 4, The Other Side of the Coin. The end is beginning.
Extra, extra, read all about it. Know the future in advance. Subscribe, like, and share.